All right, time now for Ask the Expert here on CTV Morning Live. In today, our guest, Auger Hollingsworth. We have Brenda Hollingsworth with us today. If you have questions for her, she's a personal injury lawyer. There's all the information for getting those questions to us in the next half an hour, so she can answer them for you right here live on the show. 613-789-6559, extension 2803. Ottawa.morning@ctv.ca is another way you can get that question to us. I will ask Brenda on your behalf, and you'll get the answer right here. Brenda, good morning. Good to see you.
Morning. Nice to see you.
All right, so we're going to run through a few scenarios that could be
Okay.
pretty commonplace at this time of year in particular. You are an adult biking on the sidewalk because it is a busy street. We see that quite often.
All the time.
Someone suddenly backs out of their driveway and hits you. You fall and injure your shoulder. Uh-oh. The driver gets out of the car and yells at you for being on the sidewalk, saying it's your fault. Who is at fault here, Brenda?
Yeah, so like many lawyer answers, the answer is it depends. But definitely the driver bears a significant amount of the responsibility. It might be something that's shared, but don't let a driver in that situation talk you out of calling the police or calling a lawyer to get compensation, because although you're not supposed to be on the sidewalk if your tires are bigger than a certain size, that doesn't mean it's open season to back over you. So make sure you look after yourself in that situation.
Why is there more onus on the driver in this case? A lot of people would seem to think, well, wait a minute, what's this person doing on the sidewalk?
Well, generally speaking in our system, there is an onus on the driver, whether it's relating to pedestrians or cyclists. Under the Highway Traffic Act, which wouldn't apply to a driveway, but under the Highway Traffic Act, a driver actually has to prove that they're not negligent, which normally I would have to prove a driver was negligent, but when you hit a pedestrian or a cyclist and you're a driver, you actually have to prove you're not negligent. So why didn't you see the cyclist? If you're backing up, aren't you looking?
Right.
Right? So there's negligence right there.
Okay, so should you call the police?
Yeah, so if you are injured on a bike, call the police. Cyclists, for whatever reason, don't call the police. Like pedestrians do, cyclists do not.
Really?
Yeah, it's the oddest thing.
But pedestrians do. I wonder, is it that they just feel, well, I'm not in a motor vehicle, so
Maybe.
I don't have any rights to...
Yeah, it could be. I think a lot of cyclists are resilient. They're worried about their bikes. The amount of worry about their bikes is extreme, which is, it's good if you're a cyclist, but they just don't tend to call the police. If an ambulance is needed, then the police will come. But otherwise, if you're injured, even if you can walk away, you should be calling the police.
Why is that, though? If it's nothing really serious and you can just hop back on your bike and everybody says, I'm sorry, and away you go, even if you exchange information, too.
But if you're injured, the police are supposed to come. It's just like a car accident. If there are injuries at the scene, the police are supposed to come.
Okay.
So everybody thinks about the dollar value of damage to the vehicle. Oh, is it over $2,000? No, I won't call the police. But if there's an injury, it doesn't matter how much damage or lack of damage there is to the car. You're supposed to call the police.
And you call the police, I'm assuming, for that police report that
That's
could help
right.
you down the road.
That's right.
Should there be a suit?
Right, and potentially there should be a charge laid,
Yeah.
right? If you're driving over cyclists or pedestrians, maybe there needs to be a charge laid.
If you do not call police and there's no report, no official documentation of it, are you kind of out of luck then down the road?
Not necessarily. I mean, we've had lots of success for cyclists who haven't called the police, but it's a lot harder, right? Because there's probably not damage to the vehicle to sort of corroborate your story. And if there's no witnesses, it's really, you're dependent on the goodwill of the driver to admit what happened.
Right.
And so why put yourself in that position?
Even in a case where there's no major damage or nobody seems to be seriously hurt, it's a fender bender type of thing, do you still exchange information?
Yeah, I would whether it's pedestrian, cyclist, vehicle, I would absolutely say yes. First of all, you're supposed to, but also a lot of injuries emerge like hours later. You wake up the next day and you can't get out of bed. We hear that like 50% of the time.
And what's the information you're exchanging?
Yeah, so you definitely want their name. You want the name of their insurance company. That's really important.
Okay.
Because, and even if the police do come, get the name of their insurance company, because now this is a sort of a new thing. We often get police reports where a lot of stuff is blacked out because of privacy,
right,
and we have to go through a bunch of hoops. You need that insurance company faster than we can get it for you.
What if they don't want to give you the information?
Then you definitely call the police. That actually happened to me, and I thought, buddy, you have crossed the wrong person. Somebody's like, you know, my license plate is all the information you need. And that's not true, right? It could be a stolen vehicle. It could be, you know, a friend's vehicle. Who knows? So definitely, if they won't give you the information, call the police. I had that situation, and the police did come and wag their finger and actually ticketed the driver, where he probably wouldn't have been ticketed. Well, I wouldn't have called the police if he'd just given me the information.
So exchanging that information could prevent...
Absolutely.
Because you did that as a precaution. Should nothing have happened, should there be no damage to your car, no injury, it would have been said and done with. You probably never would have seen or talked to him again.
That's
no
right.
lawsuit, nothing.
Exactly. It's just, it was dark, and I couldn't see the car well enough to know for sure that it was fine. And I'm not an expert in, you know, whether the car's been damaged. So I asked, and you should always ask.
Okay.
Just make it a habit, and tell your teens too, right? Your young drivers, they often get intimidated.
Yes.
So tell your teens, get that information.
Welcome back to Ask the Expert. We have Brenda Hollingsworth with us today from Auger Hollingsworth. Give us a call or send us an email right now, ottawa.morning@ctv.ca. Perhaps you've been in a scenario like the ones we're talking about today and you want to know a little bit more. You can ask questions at any time during this broadcast. We also welcome questions that are not related to these scenarios. She's a personal injury lawyer with years and years and years of experience.
Well,
in the good way, not in the good way. You've been with us on this show for many years.
Yeah,
so
I was
you know
just
what
saying,
you're talking
13
about.
years.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Helping a lot of people in our city along the way. Let's run through another scenario. You are visiting a provincial park and you are on a hike. There are roots all over the trail. You trip and fall and break your ankle. Who's at fault here, Brenda?
Yeah, so you're probably going to have a hard time pinning responsibility on a provincial park for roots on a trail. We get these kinds of calls a lot. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but if you're in nature, you've got to expect there to be nature. So this would be a case that I would say would be a tough one. If you think there's something up, though, if you think that, you know, there was something unusual about the path, an unusual danger, maybe it's not a route, maybe it's like a cement post where you would never expect cement, there is a very short notice period to notify the province. So 7-day notice.
Wow.
So you want to make sure if you think there's something, you send notice ASAP.
So it would be obviously in a provincial park, you're notifying the province. You go on their website, I'm sure you could find it right there.
You could call us, we'll tell you how to do it.
Okay, but it has to be something that's not nature in a way, or
something unexpected, something unusual, something that is unusually hazardous that they should have protected against.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a tough one.
Would it make a difference if you were on a paved sidewalk where a root had like broken through, causing an issue?
Absolutely, yeah. So different expectation, right? If you're on a sidewalk, a city sidewalk, let's say, and there's a significant bump because something has broken through, like a root.
Yeah.
Well, that is not expected. A city sidewalk, you are entitled to expect it to be maintained and flat, and you don't have to be looking down at the sidewalk when you walk.
Right.
So that would be different. Now, would you have some responsibility for not seeing something that's obviously there to be seen? Probably, right?
If it's not marked with like a pylon, for example, you might have more of a case. If it's marked.
Yeah, if you trip over a pylon, and we do get calls where people have tripped over a pylon, literally. But if you trip over a pylon, you're probably going to be in a tough spot. But sometimes what the government does is they'll spray paint around a hazard.
Right.
In fact, in the Byward Market here, there's spray paint everywhere, I noticed, on the sidewalk. So they're obviously going to do some repairs. But, you know, if they've taken some step to alert you, that might reduce their responsibility. But there really shouldn't be something protruding up through the sidewalk. So that would be different.
Is it always best to call a personal injury lawyer if you're doubting or if you're questioning?
Yeah.
I mean, even if it seems minor, it could be something.
Well, if you're injured, you should, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no way for you to know, and your neighbor doesn't know, and your brother-in-law doesn't know. Just call almost every personal injury lawyer, and certainly us, will give you a free consultation, right? And you can talk to a lawyer, explain the situation, and find out. But you know, no matter what, send the notice. You don't have to be sure that you have a case before you send the notice.
Okay.
Just really, if you're injured, send the notice, and then we'll sort it out. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't start a lawsuit. It doesn't do anything except protect your rights.
There's a big difference between damage to your property, say it's your car or your bike or something like, versus an injury. Right? Like when it comes to what happens next, the process. I mean, you could need medical attention. You could be off work for a long time.
Right.
There's reason there to speak with a professional, like you said, not your brother-in-law who will say, well, I know so-and-so who ended up winning $2 million because of this. Every case is different.
Well, yeah, for sure. But yes, property damage is a whole different thing. In Ontario, most of the time, whether it's your home or your car, you are dealing with your own insurance. Generally speaking, there's not a lawsuit relating to property damage in Ontario. There are some exceptions. But when it's your body, there is, for car accidents, there is a no-fault part where you do deal with your own insurance, but mostly we're looking at a lawsuit, right? And most lawsuits settle out of court, so it doesn't mean we're looking at a trial, but we're looking at starting a process to get compensation, you know, with a lawyer and a claim and all of those things.
Yeah, and that's you've pointed out many times, because there are a lot of things that you don't necessarily know right in that moment, but that can happen in the weeks and months after, loss of you know, your ability to work and all that, all the medical care you could need, how all that adds up and costs money.
Well, that's it. Like the very first case we ever had that we settled for over $1 million, I initially turned that client down because I didn't think her injuries were serious. Wow. And then she came back 2 weeks later. I was like, oh,
wow.
Yes, we can help you. And she ended up getting a 7-figure settlement. So early days, you don't necessarily know.
Best to talk to a lawyer, they know. Welcome back. Ask the Expert. If you'd like to reach out to Brenda directly, here's how you do it. Email her info@ottawalawfirm.ca, or you can check them out online, give them a call. Their address is 1443 Woodruff Avenue and also 304 O'Connor Street. All right, we have a question coming in. This question is in this morning from Carol. Carol says, my son was hit by a van riding his bike to work several years ago. As a result, he's on long-term disability and has been unable to work. Is there a statute of limitations after an accident to sue?
Right, and the answer to that is yes. For most people, it's 2 years from the date of the accident. So you want to file your lawsuit the day before the second anniversary. Now, there were some extensions because of COVID. There was a 6-month extension that could possibly apply in this situation. For car accidents specifically, there is also, it's kind of complicated, but there's something called discoverability. Like, when did you discover that you had an injury that was serious enough that you could sue? And so, you know, if it was really just like, you know, 2.5 to 3 years ago, it might be worth talking to a personal injury lawyer to see if you could fit into one of the exceptions.
Okay.
But generally speaking, it's 2 years from the date of the accident. If you're a child, it's 2 years from your 18th birthday, which is your 20th birthday.
Is it tougher to prove the longer you wait from the accident?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if the police came and the ambulance came and there's no real debate, if somebody got a ticket and paid the ticket, all of that, you're probably going to be fine. But if it's just you and the other driver, you know, time is never your friend. Yeah.
Okay, let's get into another scenario. You are in a grocery store, in the produce section. You slip on some smushed grapes that have fallen on the floor. You tear your rotator cuff. Who's at fault here?
It depends. Not you, right? Not the shopper. The shopper is not at fault here, but the grocery store might also not be at fault. Grocery stores don't have to keep perfect conditions on the, everybody knows that produce falls, people are shopping, it's a dynamic scenario. So what they're required to do is, make sure that they have a regular sweep. So they have a log that they keep, and they have to supervise the floor about every half hour, and they have to document that they've done that.
Okay.
So we find out, we get the sweep logs, and we look at what time your accident happened, and we look at the sweep logs, and then we figure out, okay, did they have a good system? Did they follow that system or not?
And I find oftentimes they have the white, the yellow slip, be careful, don't slip. Those are up all the time.
Right. And those, like, stores have 5 or 6 of those.
Yeah.
And so if they're using those, they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
Right? It's just if they don't, if those grapes are smushed, somebody has obviously stepped on them once. How long are they actually there? It's not okay if they're there for an hour.
Right.
Right? If they're there for 20 minutes, gray zone. And you won't know. Right? So you should go to a lawyer. If you have a torn rotator cuff, you should go to a lawyer. The lawyer will get the documents, and then you'll know, right?
Good information.
Yes.
You'll know if there's something to pursue there.
Exactly.
Brenda, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Great
my
information
pleasure.
today, as always. Lots to chat about. And don't forget, if you'd like to reach out to her directly, you always can. If you want to talk about your case, or if you have a case, perhaps. There's all the information on your screen for how you reach Brenda Hollingsworth with Auger Hollingsworth.